morning, good morning. Happy Thursday. I am wicked yawny. I've yawned like 6 times just while that little intro is playing, so fair warning. It might be a difficult video to watch this morning. Good morning, sweet Cindy. Morning, Mallory. Alright, February 17th. Procedures for the sin offering. Leviticus 4, 1 through 35. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Give the following instructions to the people of Israel. This is how you are to deal with those who sin unintentionally by doing anything that violates one of the Lord's commands. If the high priest sins, bringing guilt upon the entire community, he must give a sin offering for the sin he has committed. He must present to the Lord a young bull with no defects. He must bring the bull to the Lord at the entrance of the tabernacle, lay his hand on the bull's head, and slaughter it before the Lord. The high priest will then take some bull's blood into the tabernacle, dip his finger in the blood, and sprinkle it 7 times before the Lord in front of the inner curtain of the sanctuary. The priest will then put some of the blood on the horns of the altar for fragrance incense that stands in the Lord's presence inside the tabernacle. He will pour out the rest of the bull's blood at the base of the altar for the burnt offerings at the entrance of the tabernacle. Then the priest must remove all the fat of the bull to be offered as a sin offering. This includes all the fat around the internal organs, 2 kidneys, and the fat around them near the loins, and the long lobe of the liver. He must remove these along with the kidneys, just as he does with cattle offered as a peace offering, and burn them on the altar of burnt offerings. He must take whatever is left of the bull, its hide, meat, head, legs, internal organs, and dung, and carry it away to a place outside the camp that is ceremonially clean, the place where the ashes are dumped. There, on the ash heap, he will burn it on a wood fire. If the entire Israelite community sins by violating one of the Lord's commands, but the people didn't realize it, they are still guilty. When they become aware of their sin, the people must bring a young bull as an offering for their sin and present it before the tabernacle. The elders of the community must lay their hands on the bull's head and slaughter it before the Lord. Then the high priest will take some of the bull's blood into the tabernacle, dip his finger in the blood, and sprinkle it 7 times before the Lord in front of the inner curtain. He will then put some of the blood on the horns of the altar for fragrant incense that stands in the Lord's presence inside the tabernacle. He will pour out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar for burnt offerings at the entrance of the tabernacle. Then the priest must remove all the animal's fat and burn it on the altar, just as he does with the bull offered as a sin offering for the high priest. Through this process, the priest will purify the people, making them right with the Lord, and they will be forgiven. Then the priest must take whatever is left of the bull and carry it outside the camp and burn it there, just as is done with the sin offering for the high priest. This offering is for the sin of the entire congregation of Israel. If one of Israel's leaders sins by violating one of the commands of the Lord his God, but doesn't realize it, he is still guilty. When he becomes aware of his hand on the goat's head, when he becomes aware of his sin, where are my glasses? Did I not bring them out with me? I can't see a darn thing. I need my glasses. Somebody go get my glasses for me. He must lay his hand on the goat's head and slaughter it at the place where the burnt offerings are slaughtered before the Lord. This is an offering for the sin. Then the priest will dip his finger in the blood of the sin offering and put it on the horns of the altar for burnt offerings. He will pour out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. Then he must burn all of the goat's fat on the altar, just as he does with the peace offering. Through this process, the priest will purify the leader from his sin, making him right with the Lord, and he will be forgiven. If any of the common people sin by violating one of the Lord's commands, but they don't realize it, they are still guilty. When they become aware of their sin, they must bring an offering for their sin, a female goat with no defects. They must lay a hand on the head of the sin offering and slaughter it at the place where the burnt offerings are slaughtered. Then the priest will dip his fingers in the blood and put it on the horns of the altar for burnt offerings. He will pour out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. Then he must remove all the goat's fat, just as he does with the fat of the peace offering. He will burn the fat on the altar, and it will be a pleasing aroma to the Lord. Through this process, the priest will purify the people, making them right with the Lord, and they will be forgiven. If the people bring a sheep as their sin offering, it must be a female with no defects. They must lay a hand on the head of the sin offering and slaughter it at the place where the burnt offerings are slaughtered. Then the priest will dip his finger in the blood of the sin offering and put it on the horns of the altar for the burnt offerings. He will pour out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. Then he must remove all the sheep's fat, just as he does with the fat of the sheep presented as a peace offering. He will burn the fat on top of the altar. He will burn the fat on the altar on top of the special gifts presented to the Lord. Through this process, the priest will purify the people from their sin, making them right with the Lord, and they will be forgiven. Sin requires a sin offering. Leviticus 5:1-13. If you are called to testify about something you have seen or that you know about, it is sinful to refuse to testify, and you will be punished for your sin. Or suppose you unknowingly touch something that is ceremonially unclean, such as the carcass of an unclean animal. When you realize what you have done, you must admit your defilement and your guilt. This is true whether it is a wild animal or a domestic animal or an animal that scurries along the ground. Or suppose you unknowingly touch something that makes a person unclean. When you realize what you have done, you must admit your guilt. Or suppose you make a foolish vow of any kind, whether its purpose is for good or for bad. When you realize its foolishness, you must admit your guilt. When you become aware of your guilt in any of these ways, you must confess your sin. Then you must bring to the Lord as a penalty for your sin a female from the flock, either a sheep or a goat. This is a sin offering with which the priest will purify you from your sin, making you right with the Lord. But if you cannot afford to bring a sheep, you may bring the Lord 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons as a penalty from your sin. One of the birds will be a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. You must bring them to the priest, who will present the first bird as a sin offering. He will wring its neck, but without severing its head from the body. Then he will sprinkle some of the blood of the sin offering against the sides of the altar, and the rest of the blood will be drained out at the base of the altar. This is an offering for sin. The priest will then prepare a second bird as a burnt offering, following all the procedures that have been prescribed. Through the process, the priest will purify you from your sin, making you right with the Lord, and you will be forgiven. If you cannot afford to bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, you may bring 2 quarts of choice flour for your sin offering. Since it is an offering for sin, you must not moisten it with olive oil or put any frankincense on it. Take the flour to the priest, who will scoop out a handful as a representative portion. He will burn it on the altar on top of the special gifts presented to the Lord. It is an offering for sin. Through this process, the priest will purify those who are guilty of any of these sins, making them right with the Lord, and they will be forgiven. The rest of the flour will belong to the priest, just as with the grain offering. Procedure for the guilt offering, Leviticus 5:14-19. Then the Lord said to Moses, "If one of you commits a sin by unintentionally defiling the Lord's sacred property, you must bring a guilt offering to the Lord. Your offering must be your own ram with no defects, or you may buy one of equal value with silver as measured by the weight of the sanctuary shekel. You must make restitution for the sacred property you have harmed by paying for the loss plus an additional 20%. When you give the payment to the priest, he will purify you with the ram, sacrificed as a guilt offering, making you right with the Lord, and you will be forgiven. Suppose you sin by violating one of the Lord's commands. Even if you are unaware of what you have done, you are guilty and will be punished for your sin. For a guilt offering, you must bring the priest your own ram with no defects, or you may buy one of equal value. Through this process, the priest will purify you from your unintentional sin, making you right with the Lord, and you will be forgiven. This is a guilt offering, for you have been guilty of an offense against the Lord." Sin requiring a guilt offering, Leviticus 6:1-7. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Suppose one of you sins against your associate and is unfaithful to the Lord. Suppose you cheat in a deal involving a security deposit, or you steal or commit fraud, or you find lost property and lie about it, or you lie while swearing to the truth, or you commit any other such sin. If you have sinned in any of these ways, you are guilty. You must give back whatever you stole, or the money you took by extortion, or the security deposit, or the lost property you found, or anything obtained by swearing falsely. You must make a resolution by paying the full price plus an additional 20% to the person you have harmed. On the same day, you must present a guilt offering. As a guilt offering to the Lord, you must bring the priest your own ram with no defects, or you may buy one of equal value. Through this process, the priest will purify you before the Lord, making you right with him, and you will be forgiven for any of these sins you have committed. Further instructions for the burnt offering, Leviticus 6, 8 through 13. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Give Aaron and his sons the following instructions regarding the burnt offering. The burnt offering must be left on top of the altar until the next morning, and the fire on the altar must be kept burning all night. In the morning, after the priest on duty has put on his official linen clothing and linen undergarments, he must clean out the ashes of the burnt offering and put them beside the altar. Then he must take off these garments, change back into his regular clothes, and carry the ashes outside the camp to a place that is ceremonially clean. Meanwhile, the fire on the altar must be kept burning. It must never go out. Each morning the priest will add fresh wood to the fire and arrange the burnt offering on it. He will then burn the fat of the peace offering on it. Remember, the fire must be kept burning on the altar at all times. It must never go out." Further instructions for the grain offering, Leviticus 6, 14 through 18. These are the instructions regarding the grain offering. Aaron's sons must present this offering to the Lord in front of the altar. The priest on duty will take from the grain offering a handful of choice flour moistened with olive oil, together with all the frankincense. He will burn this representative portion on the altar as a pleasing aroma to the Lord. Aaron and his sons may eat the rest of the flour, but it must be baked without yeast and eaten in a sacred place within the courtyard of the tabernacle. Remember, it must never be prepared with yeast. I have given it to the priests as their share of the special gifts presented to me. Like the sin offering and the guilt offering, it is most holy. And any of Aaron's male descendants may eat from the special gifts presented to the Lord. This is their permanent right from generation to generation. Anyone or anything that touches these offerings will become holy. Procedures for the ordination offering, Leviticus 6, 19 through 23. Then the Lord said to Moses, "On the day Aaron and his sons are anointed, they must present to the Lord the standard grain offering of 2 quarts of choice flour, half to be offered in the morning and half to be offered in the evening. It must be carefully mixed with olive oil and cooked on a griddle. Then slice this grain offering and present it as a pleasing aroma to the Lord. In each generation, the high priest who succeeds Aaron must present this same offering. It belongs to the Lord and must be burned up completely. This is a permanent law. All such grain offerings of a priest must be burned up entirely. None of it may be eaten." Further instructions for the sin offering, Leviticus 6, 24 through 30. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Give Aaron and his sons the following instructions regarding the sin offering. The animal given as an offering for sin is a most holy offering, and it must be slaughtered in the Lord's presence at the place where the burnt offerings are slaughtered. The priest who offers the sacrifices as a sin offering must eat his portion in a sacred place within the courtyard of the tabernacle. Anyone or anything that touches the sacrificial meat will become holy. If any of the sacrificial blood spatters on a person's clothing, the soiled garment must be washed in a sacred place. If a clay pot is used to boil the sacrificial meat, then it must be broken. If a bronze pot is used, it must be scoured and thoroughly rinsed with water. Any male from a priest's family may eat from this offering. It is most holy. But the offering for the sin may not be eaten if its blood was brought into the tabernacle as an offering for purification. In the holy place, it must be completely burned with fire." These are some heavy readings. I always struggle with Numbers and Leviticus. They are heavy. And Exodus. Hard reads. All right. Y'all, I'm lame today. I'm sore. Exercise last night's kicking in. All right. Let's do Trim Healthy Mama 100 Days of Inspiration, day 48. All right. The gathering place. There's nothing more powerful than the family meal table. Sitting around the table together, and often including friends or lonely people, is never a waste of time. It offers opportunities for encounters with one another that you would not normally have. And best of all, it offers encounters with God. Jesus confessed himself, "The Son of Man is come, eating and drinking." Luke 7:34. In fact, Robert Karras writes, in Luke's Gospel, Jesus is either going to a meal, at a meal, or coming from a meal. Jesus loved to gather at the meal table. He still wants to come to your table and join at your meal too. Invite him to come in. Your table becomes a royal table when you dine with the King of Kings. Make time at the end of the meal to open up the Bible and to listen to his words and spend time together in prayer. These times will be the greatest strengthening times of your family life. Activities, sports, and all kinds of busyness will get in the road of your gathering together. There may be good things too, but the best thing is to gather as a family and invite God to join you. Jesus says, "Where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there I am in the midst of them." Matthew 20:18. Choose life. I call heaven and earth as witnesses today against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore, choose life, that both you and your descendants may live. Deuteronomy 30:19. While we don't want you to obsess about food perfectionism, food cheats happen now and then. The majority of your meals need to be weighed in the wisdom of this verse. Before you eat something mindlessly that can damage your body, ask yourself this question: am I choosing life or swallowing destruction? Food can tear down your life or build it up. Your choice each time. Serene and Pearl. That's actually the topic of one of my Patreon videos, and I don't know when it's posted. It's just one that I filmed not that long ago. Counting the cost. Oh, Lord. Counting the cost. Every time you eat something, is the cost of that food worth it? And I'm not talking about financial cost. I'm talking about the cost to your health. Is what you're eating, each meal that you sit down, is what you're about to put in your mouth benefit or a negative impact on your body? You need to count the cost every single meal. Does it become overwhelming at times to constantly think about your food choices? Maybe in the beginning, but after you do it consistently, it just becomes a natural. Okay, it's not fair. Everyone has struggles, but they're not all the same. You might wonder why God is allowing you to walk through those struggles that no one else is walking through. But what you may not realize is that those struggles can make you become a better person. You might wonder why God didn't give you attractive eyes like your friend has, but what you may not realize is that you have a better complexion. Either way, you have the ability to become attractive on the inside. You might wonder why you're not living in a bigger house like your neighbor down the road, but what you may not realize is that you have a bigger and richer in love family, and those things of this earth will never satisfy. Those things of this earth will never satisfy. Life is not about fairness. If it were, we would expect to be paid the same amount of money from our jobs. We'd have the same size houses, filled with the same stuff. We'd all be equally attractive in appearance, therefore having no reason to appreciate beauty. We'd have the same talents, the same knowledge, and the same old ideas. How boring would that be? For sure. For sure. All right, guys. Thanks for joining me for this yawn fest this morning as I yawned about 16 times. I'm so sore this morning. Look, I have been riding my bike, doing strength training, and trying to run just 2 minutes every single night. And I've been fine. I did Sweat into the Oldies last night with Richard Simmons from 1987, and I can hardly move. I am so lame. It's crazy. Oh, Richard. Oh, he had it right 30 years ago. He knew what he was doing in his little striped shorts. Good night. All right. So for breakfast this morning, after I wake up the old puppy dog, I'm going to come out and I'm going to make cereal. Yes, Sarah, they are. Yeah. I'm going to have cereal for breakfast. You'll have to wait and see what I make cereal out of. I don't know how good it's going to be. I've read that it's good, but we'll see. So I hope to see you there. I hope you join me. Just give me a few minutes to get my stuff together. And, yeah, I love you all. Right, Sarah? It shouldn't be as complicated. It'll probably be difficult. Mallory, there are so many great recipes for granola. I'll talk about some of them on, have you tried the one on Trim Healthy Future? It is good. It's very good. And keto granola that you buy like at Sam's Club, some of them are off plan. Some of them are perfectly on plan that have like crunchy nuts and coconut, and very, very, very good. Okay, I will be back in a few minutes after I go, like I said, I gotta go wake up the pup, and I will be live in just a few minutes. I love you guys. Have a